and we are back with episode 5 of BroodBrothers Broadcasting. You have me, Eric Tatt.
And you have Cliff Merker Russell.
And we just got off of a GT for Clutch City. It was a event held a couple years ago, and then it kind of died out. Colin McDade brought it back in our hometown, or my hometown of Houston. And then so we had Clifton from Dallas come down, and it was a pretty good GT. I think it ran pretty well. What do you think?
I have to agree. We had a long waiting list for those that didn't quite get in time. And due to restrictions, obviously we couldn't allow as many people as we'd want. So if these restrictions are lifted, I believe there's another Clutch City planned for March with hopefully an 80-person attendance.
Yeah, and what do you think about the terrain that we had there?
Every table had enough terrain. I think the table size that is now being used makes it a little cramped sometimes, especially for some types of armies. As a Gene Stealer cult player, I'm not complaining. But for people that run Knights or, not that anybody's ever going to run a Gargantuan Squiggoth again since they got nerfed, but stuff like that, you really just can't fit it anywhere. But again, that's not the organizer's fault. He had all the terrain he needed. It was painted for the most part. It was nice. It was functional. I have no complaints personally.
I had two moderate comments I told him, obviously. He's on my team, so I was just told him in team chat. But I said the last mission I felt was just way too open in the center with just the terrain layout, which they said they already got a lot of people saying about that, so they're going to fix that layout. For people that don't know, every single map, the terrain would shift just like they do at the top 100 tables at LVO. Other than that, the terrain layout pages I felt were a little weird because sometimes they would have you place things, but they wouldn't fit in that area, and it did feel cramped. So you kind of had to like move stuff around to make it look like legit, if that makes sense.
It does. You got to use your imagination on some of them. I also don't like the fact that certain terrain negatives stack, like the forest and the craters. The movement penalty does stack.
Yeah. So like you'd go out of one crater into another crater.
If your movement would stretch into both, despite a -2 penalty, if you happen to touch both, it's actually a -4 penalty to your movement.
Yeah. All my tables that I played at with the two craters that were next to each other, we just counted as one big crater. You didn't do that on yours?
No, we did. I'm saying if you had forest and craters next to each other, in which case, especially in that last mission, you did. For those that have movement-based armies or charge-based armies, having -4 stacked on top if your opponent's hiding behind both of them is a real pain in the ass.
It was pretty hard to move stuff. But luckily, my Ridge Runners were moving 12 inches instead of 14, so it wasn't too bad, but everything else was moving slow.
And it's not like your Ridge Runners are moving towards the enemy.
Yeah, they're kind of just shooting to the sides. We both did pretty well. We both went undefeated day one, which was really interesting, and we were in the top 4. And then we both lost our 4th game, but then you pulled out your 5th game, and you went 4-1, and I went 3-2. So let's talk about your list first. So do you want to go over it for everybody?
Yeah, sure. So I have a cool list. It's a very expensive list. If anybody's wanting to play this, it's going to hit their pocketbook heavily. As you all know, a box of Acolytes is around $45, and my list contains 120 of them. So if you do the math, it's a lot of money. But I take 120 Flamey Boys in units of 20. So I have 6 bomb units. 3 of the units are literally just 20 flamers. The other 3 units, 2 of them have max rock saws with a banner, and the other one has max rock cutters with a banner. I do like the rock cutters despite the -1 to hit because they really eat through things with multiple wounds like Terminators and Custodes. And as you can guess, you're seeing a lot of Space Marine armies that have units like that in them, especially if you run up against those Dark Angels where you just built-in transhumans a real pain in the ass. So to top that off, I have your typical Brood Coven, and then I have a Locust and a Clamavus. Clamavus, for obvious reasons. I don't see a lot of Locusts out there, but I will tell you from experience, he saved my ass numerous times, including with his silly little -1 leadership aura that he gives out, or that ability that he has, because I still utilize the Mental Onslaught to kill choice, either models or characters. So, and 3 Sentinels. I was running Armored Sentinels, but I'll be swapping that to Scout Sentinels just so that I can scout up the board, maybe hide in some ruins next to an objective and not be, just stuck on my side of the table. But I do like the Armored Sentinels just because they're that much more hardy and survivable. You can't get tabled anymore in ninth edition, which is great. So at the start of my turn one, I only have the Armored Sentinels on the table.
Do you want to tell how you do that?
Yeah, so some of y'all are wondering, like, how can you have so few models on the table? Well, it's real simple. I have exactly 14 units. I'll start with 7 blips on the table. I'll put my 3 most expensive units on the table, which is the ones with all the rock saws and whatnot in it. And so when my first turn comes around, I spend 1 CP and I put those 3 units back in reserve, and I'll spend an additional CP to return to Shadows the Locust. And that allows me just to have those 3 Sentinels on the table at the start of turn 1. It also makes for a very quick turn 1, which you'll need that extra time you save going into turn 2, as a lot of shit's probably going to happen.
Yeah, that's the old 8th edition Gene Stealer cult method that you're still kind of trying to bring back.
Well, it's just easier now because you can't get tabled.
Yeah, that's one thing that I always struggled with, was almost getting tabled with my list that kind of ran like that.
I'll give a quick breakdown if you want to of my matches.
Yeah, so let's go through the first 3 because those are probably like not as intense, I would think.
Not really. I had a pretty easygoing time in day 1. Not because my opponent's lists were a bad matchup. I mean, yeah, they were kind of a bad matchup. It's just a really hard list to play against, especially if you haven't played against it before. But my first opponent was Colin Coons. He's famous for his custodes, and he brought his 2 giant golden flyers, the one that has the guns and the transport one. Now that you can shoot into combat, it didn't really play a factor in this instance, but it could have. But essentially, they only have a 3-up save, and with my saturation of automatic hits from flamers, I'm still wounding a lot, especially, T8 or T whatever it is. I'm still going to wound you on 6s, and 20 D6s, it adds up quite a bit, especially when you add in, an additional 20 D6 for perfect ambush. I basically got unlucky, and on my second turn, I got his transport down to 2 wounds, where he then flew it off the table and didn't bring it back to the end of the game, which I think the new fly rules are bullshit.
You don't have to bring it back the next turn?
No, you don't. You don't have to bring it on. Get this. That's not even the worst of it. You don't have to bring it back.
Really?
And it doesn't count against them. They're not counted as destroyed.
I did not know that.
Yeah, load of crap.
That's interesting.
I just had too many models. I was taking all the objectives. My rock saws and rock cutters were eating through his very durable units. Even without using the rock saws and the rock cutters, just the amount of auto hits that he's rolling 1s on, to save against is just plinking him piece by piece by piece. It's a terrible matchup. He only had like 19 models, and I had 130.
So even with the 2-up saves that he has running around, it was not enough to
not at all.
Flame?
Not even close.
Okay.
My next match was Stephen Fox. He runs a beautiful anti-marine list. He runs the AdMech list that has, all the Catafin destroyers. What was it, like 3, 6, 9, 12, 15 of those. A couple Fulgurite Electro Priest. He runs 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18 of the Catafron Breachers. Dude had a lot of shots. It was I don't want to say it was touch and go, but his list did cause me some issues. He just didn't protect his back end enough and allowed me not just my 3.1 inch deep strike, but I was also able to get some regular deep strikes in from his back row to collect line breaker and really just eat up his models in the back.
So even with his crazy amount of shots, you were able to not just get mowed down the turn you came in?
Correct. I was able to weather them long enough to just continue saturating the field, keeping him stuck in, towards the middle of the board, or his half of the middle of the board, and claim objectives and just eat his characters, his auras, all that fun stuff.
How about his priests though? Did they not come in and like murder anything they touched, or how did that go?
So he did bring them on. I played poorly and left a small gap where they could fit, but I opted to Overwatch with Flamers, and it reduced one of his units down to a fraction. And then he charged an Armored Sentinel and magically didn't kill the Armored Sentinel with one of his units.
Wow.
I don't know how it happened, but it didn't. He didn't die, and it was amazing.
That's crazy.
I was sweating bullets for a hot minute.
Yeah, because he has the ability to
2-up and vulnerable.
yeah, and then go to a 2-up save. Well, not 2-up invulnerable. No, sorry, the Electro Priest can go up to 2 invulnerable, but he can make all of his other things go to a 2-up save in shooting.
Oh, he did. He did it for 2 turns in a row. But again, saturation of shots. They're only toughness 5, so I'm winning on 5s and 6s. It's a ton of saves he has to make, and he's rolling 1s constantly.
Yeah, I mean, do they have a Feel No Pain also, or is that just the Electro Priests?
I believe they have a 6-up.
So yeah, it's still a lot to chew through, though, right?
Oh, it was. It was. Tons to chew through.
Yeah, but once you kind of get in there, like whatever you touch should die, especially with the saws and the cutters.
Correct. It does die. It just, I'm like, do you want me to roll this? And he's like, no.
How about your third game then?
My third game was against Wes Talley, and he brought White Scars. I was surprised to be going up against White Scars. I don't see White Scars a whole lot, not with the other options that, Marine players have, but I assume it was White Scars because it was painted White Scars, and so he really doesn't have an option with what to bring. if it walks like a duck and talks like a duck, it's White Scars.
When you and me were talking about this list that you brought, because obviously we talk a lot about different Genestealer cult lists all the time, this was one of the ones, I might never have said it, I might have, I don't remember, but this was one of the lists I was always worried about, because certain Marine lists I feel like it would have a tough time against.
Your list, I would potentially see you having a rough time with it because he has those 2 character bikes. One of them ignores terrain, and the other one moves further than the other by a couple inches. And with the way the board was set up, he was in my deployment zone turn 1 with his 2 bikes. Funny enough, he spent a command point to do a 3d6 charge with the one that ignores terrain, and rolled a 3, a 1, and a 1. And failed the charge and re-rolled it again into a 1, a 1, and a 1.
Oh, wow.
It would have just killed a Sentinel.
Yeah, so if anything, you probably want him to make that charge because then he'd be out by himself.
It would have, well, he was up by himself, period.
Oh, okay.
But the loss would have been insignificant. I honestly don't know why he did that, but I assume it was maybe to take me off the objective it was on, and that way I would only score 5 or 10 points first.
And he probably took Oath a Moment, maybe, and he wanted that extra point.
Oh, you know what? You're right. So, yeah, White Scars, very standard. Everybody's very mobile. Everybody hits really hard. Everybody has a lot of attacks. Everybody's advancing, charging. And, when you run an army like mine where it falls to a stiff breeze, I have to be up there very fast. I have to be flaming everything. I have to make sure that he doesn't have chapped out in the front blocking my avenue of attack, which I did. I don't know if every Genestealer cult isn't doing this already, but dropping that unit into perfect ambush just to get rid of the screen, just so you can drop in a closer unit to get at the juicy stuff, that's Genestealer cults 101. If you're not doing that, start doing it.
Any other things you want to say about the White Scars list?
No, not really. It was I kept him to his own board side, claimed the objectives, and killed everything I needed to kill relatively quickly. It was a very standard match. I don't want to say I'm built for Marines, but, my list is good against most lists.
Yeah, so even though that was a list I felt like would give your list a hard time, you didn't really seem to struggle against it?
No.
And then at the end of that puts you at 3-0, and then we go home. Come back the next day. Your guy showed up just a little late. Time was already running.
He was late by like 2 minutes. So
it wasn't too bad, but
it wasn't bad at all. I was more frustrated that I wasn't getting to start my 4th game than he was showing up late.
Yeah.
I'm like, how are you placing in first place and not arriving on time to play your match?
Right? Or even a little bit ahead of time just to make sure you can set it up so you can have as much time as possible to play.
For sure.
Yeah. So let's go into that round 4, the awful Genestealer cult round.
This was corners, so he was going to castle anyway, but Now it's forced castle, just with better deployment for him. So that was tough for me. He had one unit of the dudes with the negative 12-inch aura, and he obviously put those guys not completely in the front, but close enough to the front to really be a pain in my ass. And he left a gap in the back corner for me to 3-inch deep strike, but there really wasn't anything juicy back there to go after, but it was such a pretty little hole that I had to just go inside of it. um, and after my perfect ambush, it allowed enough room for me to safely deposit 40 acolytes and a character bomb, which is just most of my characters and whatnot.
In the little hole that he had in the back?
I made it a big hole.
How?
I killed all the chaff in there with perfect ambush, doing a 3.1-inch deep strike.
What did you end up killing? What was back there to make the hole open up?
A unit of tactical marines, which fall pretty easily to flamers. I also killed 2 eradicators.
You killed all of that with one 20-man flamer bomb?
Yeah, I rolled pretty good.
That's pretty good.
Well, Colin made him use different dice. It was funny. and after his first roll, he asked Colin for different dice.
That's pretty funny. All right, so you killed a unit attack marines, 2 eradicators, and then you were able to open up the hole enough for, you said 40 more guys, or just
20 more guys and about 5 characters.
Okay.
And I utilized that to bring in a unit of rock saws and was able to get into contact with one of his, I don't know what all the names of the dreadnoughts are, but one of his dreadnoughts and the other eradicator. And I didn't kill the eradicator. I ended up tri-pointing him so I could stay in combat, as well as I didn't realize that all the damage was reduced by 1 on this particular dreadnought.
I think most dreadnoughts have that now.
Do they now? I don't read enough. I should, though. And that dreadnought was left with 3 wounds. But I tied it up, kept it locked in combat, and I was kind of stretched thin. And so I had to choose whenever they died wisely on what to leave on the board. But I didn't succeed on the spells that I wanted to succeed on. Mental Onslaught kind of failed for me for the first time in the tournament, and didn't do enough wounds to a character. My smites, very lackluster. He did have Tigerius, just denying everything left and right. The guy's an asshole. And then what lost me the game was the fact that our table was in the back corner, and it was very cramped. And we had one of the 2 TOs overseeing the game, since it was one of the top 2 tables. And then we had me, and then we had the opponent, and we had a wall, and plus all the merchandise. It was just a really cramped space.
There's also like 2 people standing there watching the whole time too.
So mobility was very limited. And as an army that is very mobile and where I have to drop everything, you have to stay on top of things. And I didn't, because I was just, I was flustered with all the stuff going on. And on my turn, whenever I had my character bomb in this box on his corner where he was standing, kind of blocking my path to walk back there, I don't think it was intentional. It was just where he stood most of the time, and it blocked access, and I couldn't see my characters back there. And so, the whole saying, out of sight, out of mind. Well, on my next turn, when I brought in a bunch of stuff on turn 3 and charged everything that I could charge to do a bunch of damage, I didn't see my characters back there and completely forgot about them. And after I started attacking and realized it was too late. Obviously it's my opponent's choice whether he lets me go back and do an obvious thing that was going to happen, and he chose not to let me do it.
Yeah, kind of like a little Tony style there.
Mm-hmm. And so I lost all my characters on his next turn because they were just standing there. Their goal was to kill 3 other characters. They would have done it. It was an apothecary who doesn't have a great armor save, and 2 other characters that I can't remember.
Was it Tigerius?
Tigerius was over there. He was definitely one of my choice targets to get rid of.
Well, when you brought in all your other stuff, where did you bring it in? Was it in the front of the army, like pushing it back, or were you dropping more stuff into that hole that you now kind of opened up? Or
I dropped some into his adjacent corner because there really wasn't anything over there except for a rhino on an objective and that 3 wound. I think it was a contemptor dread. I charged the rhino to get onto the objective so that I could claim more objectives. And then the vast majority of my forces assaulted the front. I had to do the perfect ambush to get closer to his 12-inch deniers, and I was able to make a charge into them as well as into a tactical squad, and I wiped them off the center objective and killed the 5 guys that were denying the rest of my shit from getting closer.
Yeah, that's one huge kind of buff for us, and nerf to, not really a huge nerf, but a nerf to the Space Marines is we don't have to worry about getting like an insane roll on a perfect ambush to be able to flame or like shoot somebody off their infiltrators, because you'd fall out 12 inches and you'd be like, all right, I need like a 4 or 5 on some of these dice rolls and to get close. But now you're like, I don't care what I roll. I just need 1 and I can flame the infiltrators.
100%. I did not roll under a 3 for my perfect ambush that weekend, so I was fortunate.
Yeah, those are always good weekends. I did know, or one thing you forgot to mention is you did try to Vect an Auspex scan and you rolled a 1.
Man, I rolled 2 1s for Vect that weekend. The other one wasn't as impactful. That one against the Ultimate players with it.
I rolled 2 6s and a 1. That was my Vex.
What are those 6s like? I don't think I've ever seen one on a Vect.
It was weird because I've never either. And I was like, whoa, 2 in one day. Wow. And then of course I rolled my 1 on like the first 2 were like, kind of important, not too big of a deal. But the third one that I failed on was like, oh no. And then it failed. I was like, but I'll talk about that later in my overview. So you ended up losing.
I did end up losing that match. It was he won 82-69. So it wasn't a steamroll, but it should have been a I don't want to call it an easy win for me. If I had chosen better secondaries, it would have been an easy win. I wasn't thinking.
You lost by 13 points. So what were those 13 points?
The 13 points were secondaries. I chose Assassination because he had a number of characters that I wanted to kill, and he had a lot more units than I did, so I stupidly chose Kill More.
That's always a bad one.
Yeah, I know, but I really want it. This is the first Ultramarines player that I've gone against, and I really wanted to kill everything.
I don't know. I just don't see that as a good one for us, just because I feel like everything dies, and like I killed a couple units, but
when your army consists of 3 or 6 20-man blobs, I can typically pull it off because they have to focus everything to kill this unit and then get lucky and kill this other unit, unless I've poorly hidden my characters or forget to charge with them.
If you would have killed those 3 characters, you would have got 9 more points. So now you're still down by 4. The characters would have been alive though, right?
If I would have succeeded in killing more.
Oh, okay.
Because I didn't, because I lost in the turn that my characters all got wiped. That was 4 easy kills for them.
Yeah.
And after I lost my characters on turn 3, I lost all that extra power, and it was an uphill struggle from then on.
Yeah, because those guys would therefore be alive still, and then they'd move on to kill even more to just snowball the lead.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's pretty big.
It was huge. It lost the failing to charge lost me the game.
I'm surprised you didn't have them kind of like more bodyguarded than.
I thought 40 models would free up enough space and survive long enough for me to drop more units back there on turn 3, but it didn't quite work out that way.
So would you, if you went into that game a different way, but he set up the same way, like we reset, except you can change, do you think you still would have deep struck back there and did the same thing, turn 2?
I'm afraid to say what my tactic would have been because it's silly and I should have done it already and it would have easily guaranteed me the game before it even started. He chose Assassinate because typically a Gene Seer cult's aura giving dudes have to be out there with the army to charge and do all their fun shit. But if your opponent chooses Assassinate, then you choose While We Stand, While We Fight. And if it works out that your 3 characters are the most expensive models in your game, you just castle with them and put 40 dudes around them and then go do whatever you want. And that's a 30-point swing before the game even starts.
Hey, you're learning my tactic and how I won so many games.
It's frustrating.
So that's what you think you would have done differently, is just next time you'll choose While We Stand and just chill your characters in the back and just...
Yeah, 100%.
Did you not have a way to get to your characters once they're down?
No, he didn't have anything deep striking.
So he had no deep strike and he had no like fast movers.
Like I said, I was an idiot.
Oh man.
I completely admit that part of that combat and battle. Very sad.
And then I just did some quick math, and a 20-man flamer bomb only should do 7.8 wounds to Marines.
I'm not saying my round of flaming wasn't spectacular and his saves were terrible. That's just what happened.
Oh, I'm not going against. I'm just for anyone listening.
Don't expect that to be the norm, people.
Yeah, that he killed 10 wounds and then 6 more wounds, so he did 16. So you literally over doubled the amount of average wounds you should have done.
Well, there's a reason he asked for different dice.
Yeah, I would have made you roll different dice too.
Anybody can roll my dice if they want to. I welcome it.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I'm like, if because there'll be times where I'm rolling hot. I'm like, you can roll my dice. I don't care.
Now, my fifth round was my favorite round. Not because it was a guaranteed victory for the most part, but I saw this list that I was going to, at the GT, and the whole GT. I'm like, I would really just love to play against that list. And the other guy who's thinking, he saw my list and he's thinking the exact opposite. That's the only list I don't want to play tonight.
When I saw you two matched up, I was like, this isn't even a game.
No, it was so fun to me. It was old Travis Starnes brought his Keeper of Secrets list with a bajillion demonettes and fiends. And when you have 120 flamers, his whole army just goes up in smoke, pun intended. And it's essentially what happened. Now, we turned it into a bloodbath just because we were playing, hot and loose. And at the end of the game, there were only 27 models list out of about 260.
Yeah, because the second day, you and me were playing right next to each other both games. So I was looking over at your game.
It was so much fun. That was my favorite match.
Yeah, I was just like, are you serious? He gets the easiest last round pick. Come on. And
so great.
What was worse about it is that you were going up against an army that had no guns. So that huge opening in the middle literally didn't matter to you.
It had no effect. And I love all these minus, to shoot gimmicks when you're running nothing but flamers.
Yeah, right. So you pretty much single-handedly cinched that one up, and then you ended up
getting best general, which is great. I would have rather gone 5-0, but anybody would have rather gone 5-0. But getting best general was a nice consolation prize. I won a cool sword. It's hanging up in my game room, right next to all my liquor.
Oh yeah, it's not a bone sword though for the Primus needs that we have, but
I know
it's close.
It's close. It'll do in a pinch.
And then you ended up getting second place though.
I did.
So that's pretty good.
Is a nice welcome back to the scene.
Yeah, right. And with a very big skew list, do you think there is any type, maybe not even there, just in general, what do you think would be a hard matchup, do you think, for you?
I want to say any super high durable with mobility list. Space Marines can always pull it out of their ass just because they, the new Storm Shields, they have a 1+ save and cover and all the different types of guns that they can employ now to take care of either horde or armor. They have an answer for everything. But is there a common list that can be the rock to my scissors? I don't think so, but maybe you have a better idea.
No, I'm just curious to like if you're at if you're at LVO, right, and round 1 was about to happen, so it could be literally anything. Which list would you be like, oh god, going into? Like, I don't know if I'm going to get win my first round.
I'd just say it's always a gamble when you're going up against Space Marines. It's there.
Any particular?
Yeah, sure. How about Dark Angels? Those assholes are the most durable pieces of shit in the world with their 4-up transhuman, their 5-up feel no pain, all that other shit. Oh, I hate them so much.
To be fair, though, transhuman really doesn't hurt your list as bad as some other lists.
I have 3 units with max heavy weapons that would typically be wounding their asses on 2s or 3s, so it makes a huge difference.
You would in that case, but all your flamers, there's like, eh.
When you run 8 rock saws into a unit of 10 Terminators and only kill...
Oh, yeah, it kills 2, I think, on average.
It kills 2. It's so demoralizing.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I don't doubt that. I'm just saying that at least you have a decent amount of firepower, I guess, that you just don't care about that would actually do it. I don't know how many Terminators your army would kill Flamers though. That'd be an interesting thing to math out.
I think the ultimate goal for going up against that list is just to keep them in their own corner.
How lucky do you think you have to be if you think your hardest matchup is like a tough Space Marine army, and that's like the most common army in the game right now, to be playing an army that the counter is like the meta?
I think I get pretty lucky not having to face as many, but I think that's also because there's a couple other skew lists out there that can run rampant over Space Marine lists. You know, that Slanesh list is, you know, one of them. The AdMech list that I played against is another one. The number of shots they have and the durability just chew through Space Marine lists, and people are learning to beat the meta, and that's what has to happen before the meta can shift.
Yeah, so you're kind of almost riding the coattails of thinking that you want to counter the counter meta and just hoping that there's enough people that are going to try to counter the meta that you'll be that little pocket of, well, I'm here to counter you while you guys counter my hardest matchup.
My whole game plan is no one's planning for Gene Sealer Cult.
What army? I've never heard of them.
Exactly. I mean, it's only a miracle that we live close together and attend all the same GTs and are some of the higher ranked Gene Sealer Cult players. So our meta and our local opponents have to plan for Gene Sealer Cult. But if we go out of state, nothing.
Especially, you know, me being the number one Gene Sealer Cult player now. But I mean, who's looking anymore? So
I mean, if we base it off the last GT.
Touche. You didn't even get a Best Gene Sealer Cult player award, I recall.
They didn't have one. I got Best Tyranid. Slap in the face.
I know, right? Doesn't even know what we are. It's the same thing, right?
Yeah, no, this will do.
So is there anything you'd like to change in your list?
Really, no, except for maybe the Sentinels. Maybe try out some different relics. That's about it. That's all I can think of. There's not really any better way to optimize it, in my opinion.
So switch the Sentinels to Scout Sentinels, and then...
Or maybe just one Sentinel to a Scout Sentinel.
Okay, I can see that. Or two, maybe.
Or two.
So you got that home objective grabber, and then you got the two trying to get the flanks for when there's two outside the deployment zone.
Exactly.
And then you can also push out your screen in case they have something trying to come into. And then that was the one thing when I first saw your list was the relic choice. I was like, come on, what? You're like, yeah, it's good. And then at the end of the day, you're like, all right.
I didn't say it was good. I said I wanted to try it.
It's the same thing. You would have picked it if you didn't think it was good.
I never killed anybody with my Primus before, and I'm like, maybe with this, whatever this relic sword is, it'll happen. I get to reroll everything basically, and still, I think he killed like one character, which is 100% more than he's ever done before. But it's a CP I could have spent elsewhere.
Surprised you didn't take like something on your Patriarch or.
I didn't. I had the crouchling.
Sure, oh, yeah, because I always take the crouchling on my Magus, so I can get +2 to cast. So then I would have taken like the. Make the Patriot. Oh no, because you weren't Twisted Helix. I don't know.
Or the +1 in bold. Amulet of the Void Worm.
Yeah, and it can't be overwatched. It's always a good one too. That might be better. Yeah, so maybe the Void Worm. Or I honestly thought you were going to try to take the swords on the Locust, but then because I thought about that too, and I was going to tell you, but then I thought about it and I realized that the Locust, when he charges, he gets 2 damage on his swords, but if he takes the relic, he doesn't.
Correct.
So I was like. That it just literally makes them have double the attacks, but now they're just 1 damage. But so you did say that the Locust was going to be talked about how good he actually was. So do you want to give your Locust rant?
He saved me so much. Just his ability to soak wounds on a 2-up and act like a drone or a shield drone is huge. Just having him stick around, the Patriarch and the character bomb. He's a huge threat, and nobody ever sees his ass, and they don't know that he has a 6-inch heroic intervention, and he just goes out there and if somebody gets too close, he whoops their ass.
Not only is it a 6-inch heroic intervention, it's a 6-inch heroic intervention that can go directly towards a character. So he doesn't even have to go towards the closest model. He can literally be like, I'm going to go around this 5-man unit of intercessors and just touch you, the character, in the back, and get ready. Because I'm going to give you the business. And then he's got the 2-up drone save, except he can only take damage, not wounds. But so any general tactics or anything you want to talk to everyone else that really is interested in your list that maybe doesn't seem completely upfront? Because I know your list is pretty aggro, and when I mean aggro, Usually I think of like Magic decks, and there's like aggro, and then there's like board control.
Counter.
Yeah, and I feel like yours is way more aggro, even though a lot of people would think it's board control. To me, it seems a lot more aggro. Like you are controlling the board, but you're only controlling it because you're being so aggressive and throwing out every threat in their face that they have to deal with it.
I'd call it forced board control.
Yeah, so I feel like it's way more of an aggro list, and most aggro lists are pretty self-explanatory. But is there anything that might not seem straight up that is pretty subtle that you might want to tell anyone or give light to?
I mean, I'll say the same thing I did before I got into explaining my list. It's unaffordable. Unless you got lucky in 7th edition and bought yourself 6 of the Overkill box set like I did, you're not going to have enough models. 120 acolytes is a bitch to collect. As for tactics, no, it's just like Eric says. It's very aggro. It causes forced board control. Even the inability to really spread out like we used to doesn't really hamper me all that much. With 12-inch flamers, if you want to charge me, you're going to pay for it, and I'm going to have a good time.
Yeah, you had what, 12 CP to start with every game because you only had one detachment, right?
I only had one detachment. I did the 12 CP. I had the Brood Coven. I rolled 2 or 3 extra CP every single time, which was great. And then the +1 CP every turn was also great. So I didn't really ever lack for CP.
And you used pretty much what you'd use: Perfect Ambush twice a match, Vect once, and then Line of Wait maybe twice.
I didn't even use Vect every game.
But you always had to like make sure you had enough CP for it.
Correct. There's always something sneaky.
Yeah. So you start with a lot, but with only like 2 or 3 things you're worrying about, you're going to be out of CP and almost instantly.
Yeah, true.
So that's always one thing that's always hard. But I'm not sure if you ever mentioned this, but you were Formed Emperor for your entire army.
Oh, yes, I was 4-armed Emperor because I do love the +1 to charge, and obviously Vect.
Yeah, so everyone that was coming in was always probably near the Clamavis or mostly near the Clamavis, so they'd always be a 7-inch charge.
Anybody that always one of the heavy weapon teams, they were always landing next to the Clamavis.
Yeah, and then pretty much always almost a guaranteed charge. 7-inch rerollable is usually like a 90% guaranteed charge.
Oh, yeah.
So, and then if you brought in 2, that's 3 chances. That's one of them's making it in there.
Mm-hmm. And I typically always brought in 2 units to charge.
Yeah, and then just hope one sticks.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's going to be a real bad day when that eventual neither one touches. And then you're just like, all right, that was fun.
Your turn. Would you like to wipe these 2 units off? Allow me to just pick them up.
That's the one thing that we don't got going for us. That's the only thing I think that's holding our army back, is that we don't have anything to put on a point that if it can be seen by the enemy, it will be their next turn.
Mm-hmm.
Where a lot of the other good lists do have that.
Yeah, people are always like, yeah, with these flamers, they're pistoled, so when they get stuck in combat, they can flame on the next, in the shooting phase. And I'm like, do you know how many times I get to do that? Almost none, because they don't survive the next combat.
I either killed what I touched, or I die when someone touches my, like no one's going to charge your acolytes in melee and be like, oh, I hope I can kill them. Right?
Yeah.
So I guess if you have nothing else, I can go over my not as good performance, because obviously you're just way better of a player.
Proof's in the pudding.
So I was running, which was also really interesting, was a completely different list. It wasn't even close to yours at all. It's very much something that I feel like I would classify as more of a control aspect. So we were almost running the exact opposite styles of lists, where I was trying to control the center of the board and you're kind of just trying to make the most chaotic mess that the opponent had to deal with while you just kind of just did your thing. So I ran something that I've never run before, which is the Pauper Princes. And the Pauper Princes had a Jackal Alphys, a Primus, 3 Goliath trucks, a Kellermorph, 9 Ridge Runners, and then inside those trucks would be 2 10-mans with 4 rock cutters and 2 5-mans with 2 rock cutters. And then I would have a 10-man with 4 rock cutters also that was in reserve or just sitting there waiting to get into a truck. And so I would also have on top of that my four-armed Emperor detachment, which was a Magus with a Crouchling, a Patriarch, and then just 3 sets of 10 BroodBrothers. And so the idea behind it was that the Goliath trucks would kind of sit in the middle or close to the edge of my table edge, or not my table edge, my deployment zone. And then they would charge the center objectives and just keep the center cleared while the Ridge Runners would just attack the back lines and any hard hitters that were trying to come in. And so it was very much a controlled type of army, while yours was very much an attack army. But I would also bring the 3 sets of BroodBrothers that all had the ability to deploy scramblers. So that was their only job. So I'd almost always take deployed scramblers all my games, and then I'd just slowly bring out 1 unit a turn. One of those BroodBrothers was 12-man, and that was just because I had 10 extra points. So I just took 2 extra guys, and they would just sit next to my Primus or my Patriarch and Magus and just guard them. And I would pretty much just keep my characters next to the Ridge Runners the whole time, and they wouldn't do anything except cast some powers on the acolytes that were being sent as missiles to the center of the battlefield. And so you'd send out, clear stuff off the points, hold it, die. Send out the next wave, send out the next wave. And the whole time I would just be using my Ridge Runners to hold kind of the backfield objectives. So my matches that we can go over. My first match, I went up against a Harlequins player, and it was kind of close. He got kind of aggressive with his bikes. I spiked pretty hot on my damage, and I did lots of early turn damage because he made me go first, which I don't want to ever go first against Harlequins, but he made me, and I killed a bunch of stuff. I killed a whole boat and like 4 bikes. And then on top of that, 3 of those bikes were killed because of melee, because I did the vehicle trick where you can put your vehicle at the very edge of your deployment zone next to the blip, so it's hanging out in the middle of nowhere. And so you get like the extra 5 inches of movement. And so I was able to get out, move, advance, and then charge because he was on the line with his bikes. And they killed 3 with their rock cutters.
Such a good trick.
Oh, yeah. And I, just like you, I love my rock cutters because the amount of multi-wound stuff that's above 2 now is so strong. And one thing that we did come to a conclusion later, spoiler alert, is that a cutter just instantly kills a Catan or Gadskull.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah, so they can be like, oh, well, I can only take 3 wounds this turn. Like, well, I rolled higher than how many you have, and it doesn't say you take damage, it just says you die. And they're like, yep, that's how it works. Unfortunately, it didn't work in that game, but I'll talk about that when I get to my third round. So it was pretty much, he was a little bit too aggressive. I was able to deal with all that, and then he eventually, since he was so aggressive, he lost so much, he had to be more aggressive to try and make up the lost ground. And then I just was able to overwhelm him once he started just sending out things to his death. It was still close game points wise, but mine is very like methodical in the way it plays, where I'm not going to win by much. I'm just going to win and make sure I win. So that's how my army kind of plays, where you're just kind of like
complete opposite of mine. Did I kill you? No, crap.
Yeah, yours is like, this is going to be really bad for one of us, and here it goes. So then the second game, I played someone on my actual team. He plays knights, and there was 2 knight players there, which was pretty impressive. And he was the knight player I didn't want to play because he had the melee knights with the invul saves in melee, which if you're a Genestealer Cult player, if you go up against knights that don't have invul saves in melee, it's not even close. You literally, it's almost a guaranteed knight kill with just 2 acolytes. And going into this, he would just always rotate, get him to a 4-up. I would hit him. I would do like almost all their wounds. They would live. He would full throttle them the next turn. And it's like I didn't do anything. And so it was very, very oppressive to make sure I didn't die, because I was also trying not to give him any kills on my Ridge Runners because he took Bring It Down. So I was able to hide most of my stuff in the back corner where I could see him, but he couldn't see me because he's knights, and you can see knights through obscuring, but they can't see you.
Yep, 18 plus
And
wounds.
so I was just trying to do as much damage as I could with him and then throw my acolytes out there to move block. And yes, you can move block knights. It's just a little bit more difficult because you need to know how far they're going to move and make sure that the back of their base, when it clears you, is within an inch, and then they can't actually walk over those models because then they can't clear you. So that's what I was doing the whole time, and I pretty much put his Castellan, who he had in the side of the board, I just kept him there, and he maybe moved 6 inches over 2 turns to try to get up into an angle on my Ridge Runners. And then when he got close the next turn, I kind of just went the other direction. And then I ended up mind controlling one of his knights. Twice, I think I got it off. And then I ended up blasting his guys with it. The first time I did lots of damage, but the second time it was kind of whimpered off. And it was nice because the first time I did it, it blasted some stuff. It was his Castellan, I think. It blasted his Castellan. And then I ended up doing a bunch of damage to it, the one that I mind controlled. I didn't kill it. And then he full throttled it. So then when I mind controlled it again, it was at max wounds, or acting like max wounds. At least that's what he said. He said it lasts until his turn. So then I just was able to use it again at full throttle and then blasted other stuff with it. That was how that went. And it was a close game. It came down to literally, could I kill a single Armiger with full wounds with what I had left on the board, which is like 3 Ridge Runners and some characters. And the answer was yes. And what did it was Mental Onslaught. I've never had Mental Onslaught ever work for me, and it finally did. And I did like 7 or 8 wounds to it before he rolled higher than me. And then I took the rest of it off with the Ridge Runners.
That's nuts.
Yeah. I was like, oh my God, it actually works. I've never seen it work before. And then the third game was against, I went against Dino. And he was like top 1, top 2 Necron players for ITC. And he was running, I'm also starting a Necron army. But he was running something that I never would have thought would be good. And I was just like, what is this jank? And so it was 2 units of Death Marks, 2 Hex Mark Destroyers, a bunch of max, not warriors, immortals, a couple characters, Void Dragon, and a unit of Flayed Ones, and a unit of Lich Guard with shields. And so he gives me first turn because he wins the roll off, and I just unload all of my Ridge Runners into one of his immortal units, and they all die. He's like, "Oh, you have a lot more firepower than I thought you would have." Yes, I do. And he's like, "This is going to be a way harder game." He's like, "I don't think I could win this," and it turned out to be really close in the end. His Void Dragon came out, tried to charge, and I tried to vect it, and I failed the vect, and then the reroll. And he made the charge, and he kind of whiffed on the charge. So I was like, okay, that's good. And I fell back, and my Acolytes came in because I said we found out that a Rock Cutter just instantly kills the Void Dragon if he's down, and he was down to like 4 wounds. So I was like, if I just do 2 or 3 wounds to him, like that's an easy clip. And I did like 6 wounds to him, and he saved all of them with a 4-pinball. Rolled all but 1. He's like, I will CP reroll this last one. And he rolled a 4 up. I was like, awesome. All right.
Wow.
I guess I have to deal with him another turn. Did it another turn, and he didn't do, I think he did like 4 wounds total to my Ridge Runners. That was it.
That's nothing for Void Dragon.
Yeah, it was bad. And so then I was able to capitalize on that. His Flayed Ones, I don't think did anything except make a charge and kill some BroodBrothers, and that was it. And then they all died, and that was the game. And it came down to, I won by 1 point. So it was a pretty close game. So then my 4th game, the game you lost, was also the game I lost. So we were both really sad because we thought we might have a Gene Stealer Cult final, and then that would be something for the ages. So I went into that, and I fought the guy that won the whole tournament, Mike DeHoyas. He was playing his Harley Quinns, and it always happens every single time. I will play him round 4 or 3, and he will always win at a GT. But we will always play our same lists at RTTs, and I will always win. And it just works like that every single time. GT, he always wins. RTTs, I always beat him. So it's not like I knew I was going to go in there and lose because, I beat him. It's just I never beat him at a GT. And it was pretty close. He beat me by 11 points. There was a couple things I did wrong here and there, but I feel like the mission itself just held me in a bad spot because he was able to kind of corral me into that corner, and I wasn't ever able to leave just because they're so fast. He was just threatening all my 2 sides the whole time. I just couldn't get out to start gathering objectives. And that's pretty much what he beat me on is primaries. If it was one that I could hold 2 easily in my deployment zone, I would have won easily because I was holding 5 each turn. He was holding 10 each turn. And then he ended up maxing it with the 45 at the end. But then I couldn't. So I lost by 11 points. And that was where I lost it. And he picked bad secondaries. So I pretty much every single time I played any matchup, I would win. And then I would lose. So it was pretty close. He beat me by 11 points. And that was where I lost it. And he picked bad secondaries. So I pretty much every single time I played any matchup, I I would almost always win on secondaries, and then the primaries were always what would be close because my army takes you off of the secondaries, and then I die. So then you take me off of it. So primaries against me are always low, and that was the only game where it was high. And of course, that was the game I lost the most by.
That's rough, especially against your own teammate.
Yeah, I did do the trick that we did talk about one time on the show. I think this might have been our first ever episode we talked about it on. He charged my Ridge Runners. I think it was like turn 2 or turn 3. Charged my Ridge Runners with 3 bikes four bikes. And he hit them, and he hit a unit of acolytes. And the acolytes fought back, and they chopped up 1 bike, which they're really good at because it's a 4-up save, and if they don't pass it, I can deal D3 damage, and then I pretty much kill you at the end because I roll just higher than the amount of wounds you have left. So they're really good at killing Harlequin stuff. So I killed 1, and I did 1 wound to another one. So he had 3 bikes left, 1 with 2 wounds. And he was touching, the 2 wound model was touching my Ridge Runner, and the other 2 were touching the acolytes. And this is where I made a big mistake, but I also made a really good play at the same time. The mistake was I had a CP that I was saving to reinforce the acolytes, and I forgot to do it because what they were going to do is they were going to get reinforced, and they're going to go out and kill something that was hiding on the other side of this wall. But there was only 2 of them left, and so I couldn't do it because I was going to string out the people that came back reinforcements further out and then move them after or assault afterwards, but I forgot to do that. So that was a huge mistake on my end, which probably cost me the game. The other thing that I did do that was really cool was I mental onslotted, and it says pick a model. So I picked the model that didn't have any wounds on it. And so you start to roll, and you have to deal damage to the unit or the model that has wounds on it, because it doesn't deal damage to that model. It deals damage to the unit. It specifically says that in the psychic spell. So until that model dies, we keep rolling. And he failed every single one. And so I killed the one that was touching my Ridge Runners, and then I killed the second one that I picked at the same time.
That's dirty.
Yeah, so I freed my Ridge Runners, and I killed 2 bikes with 1 mental onslaught spell.
Awesome.
Yeah, and then acolytes were supposed to be able to get out after that, but obviously I couldn't because I wasn't able to revive enough guys. And then they ended up dying. But if I would have remembered that, it would have been pretty good, and they would have made it out.
Yeah, I forgot to mention against the White Scars player, I used reinforcements 3 times on the same unit.
It's just every single turn, just like, and more guys.
Yeah, it kept killing off the rock saws, and then he wouldn't finish off the unit. I would take him out of combat, and then reinforcements, and he goes, "You can do what?" I'd roll like 4 or 5 every single time, be like, "Let me go put all those back."
Yeah, that's the big thing. It's when you roll 4 or 5 on that thing, the other person's just like, "What?" But then you get those games where like you roll 1, and you're like, all right, 1 CP for a 10 model unit or 10 point unit. Yay. That was the game I lost. I lost by 11, and it was all primary because like we were saying earlier, I take While We Stand, We Fight, and I did not lose a single point to that the entire tournament. I took it every single game. I maxed it every single game.
Which one?
While We Stand, We Fight.
Oh, yeah, that one.
Yeah, so I take that every single turn, and I maxed it every single turn. So I would take that and deploy scramblers, and then the third one was always up in the air, but I would always max deploy scramblers and While We Stand, We Fight. So it was always 25 easy secondary points for me, and then it was whatever the third one was, which is one of the other downfalls against Harlequins is he didn't have anything good. Like the only good thing they have that I take is I take it, bring it down to get 10 points, but that's it, and that hurts because I have 2 secondaries just giving me 10 points to max. So
that's rough.
It's pretty hard because I could have easily done other things if I picked any of the other ones, but I didn't. And then my last game was against Steve Fox, the same list you played, except mine was on the last table, which was the 4 objectives. So that's not only amazing for him because he's a super durable, I don't move very fast army. I want to hold these 3 objectives, but it also just didn't have a single thing of line of sight blocking in the middle. So for the people that weren't there and are listening, it was pretty much the way I would describe it is you're playing hammer and anvil. And if you took about 8 inches off the side, running all the way down, all the terrain was there. But in the center, I could see from pretty much about 8 inches in, I could see across the whole table to their side 8 inches as like a diagonal. And that whole open spot in the middle was just open, wide open. There's a forest there, so you couldn't get shot at -1. But like if he's shooting all of his stuff at my stuff, he's going to kill way more than I'm going to kill of his.
Oh, yeah.
So I could just not venture anywhere. And so I was pretty much fighting around these side objectives the whole time where I would kill him off it, he'd kill me off it. I'd kill him off it, he'd kill me off of it. I mean, it was just back and forth the whole time. And it was just 5 points on primary every single time. And finally, he was going to beat me because he was able to bring it down. And he was able to get more points on it where I couldn't take a secondary that was better against him. But what I did do is I did a really cheeky play where I killed one of his characters, and he also had While We Stand, We Fight. So I went up, and they called time, and it was the end of the 4th round, and I just started moving some models because we were going in round 5, and I was winning by 3 points. And I go, well, I just started moving my models, and we would only be on turn 5 for like 10 minutes most. And I'm not the guy that I'm not going to try to win because the game ended. If we could get, extra time to finish it, because I don't not like going 5 turns. And then Colin's like, yeah, you guys can finish up turn 5. And I was like, okay. So then where I would have at that point won by 3 points, I was like, we should go to turn 5. So he said, go to turn 5. I was like, all right, because that's the right thing to do. And then it came down to, could I kill 3 of his breachers off of 1 objective with all what I had left, which was 4 Ridge Runners and 2 trucks? And the answer is almost. I killed 2 of them, and he had 1 left, and he goes, I have 2 CP left, I'm going to auto pass.
Oh.
And then I go, roll it anyways, and he rolled it, and he got a 6. I was like, so I would have won if you couldn't auto pass that, and that would have made me win by those 2 points, or 3 points, but instead he won by 2 points.
Man, how disheartening. There's
a couple things I realized I could have done wrong. I could have done a little bit different, but not too much to win. I mean, it was a close game, but it was that very end where I shot all of my Ridge Runners. I hit and wounded so high, and then he just rolled pretty much every single save, and I just bounced off, and I just couldn't do those 9 wounds.
Yeah, it must be nice to have a bunch of invulnerable saves.
Yeah, right. Every time everyone's like, so how many invulnerable saves do you have? I go, these 2, 5 ups. Oh, that's it?
Yeah.
Yes.
And then they ask you again and then again.
Yeah.
What's that one save? 5 up. How about that one? 5 up.
Yeah, I go, listen, it's literally just guardsmen. Can you kill a single normal guardsman? Then that's what you're killing.
Mm-hmm.
They're just a lot scarier on the offense. Same defense. But that's pretty much how my tournament went. So all my wins were close. My losses were close. I feel like both my losses were my reasons why I lost were because of me. It was just one bad play, which I feel like in this day and age with Gene Circle, you have to play almost a perfect game because they're so low on the totem pole. Especially with the armies we were playing against. Like, we're playing in the final rounds, like the top lists, you're playing Space Marines. I played AdMech. You're playing Demons, which, yes, is an amazing army, but against yours is like literally a walk in the park.
Fish in a barrel.
And then I was playing Harlequins, which is the other considered strongest army. So we were playing the 3 to 4 hardest armies, in the game with what's considered maybe the 3rd or 4th worst army in the game. So
yeah,
we were doing pretty good.
Making it work.
Yeah, which everyone was like, I don't understand what's going on. But at the same time, you and me were like, we don't understand what's going on. I shouldn't be here.
My whole hope and dream was that it'd be me against you in the final table, but that didn't come to fruition.
We have never played each other.
No, but I do firmly believe that my list would beat your list.
Well, I think my list would have totally beat your list. So. And that's exactly how it would be. And we will never know.
No, we'll never know. I won't play you in a play setting. It has to be the GT.
Yeah, but hopefully we never do, because if we're the only 2 Gene Circle players there, then one of us would get knocked out.
Oh, so frustrating.
Also, that would be such kind of almost like a really boring game, because you'd be like, I deploy my stuff, I kill you. You deploy your stuff, you kill me. I deploy my stuff, I kill you. You deploy your stuff, you kill me. All right. Who rolled better?
Yeah.
Like, that's pretty much it.
We could just we can make an agreement not to use Vect.
Yeah. That was my next thing. I was going to be like, whose Vect didn't work? Who rolled the 1 and who rolled the 6?
Damn it. I'd roll the 1.
We would both roll the 1.
That's why we both have to make a gentleman's agreement not to Vect.
Yeah, we actually just put our models down the board and just charge at each other.
Done.
But I don't think I would change anything about my list either. I feel like I feel like mine wins less, but has a less likely chance to just completely fall apart.
And mine's a powder keg.
Yeah, and yours is just like, this is going to go down and someone's going to get it like 80 to 90 points. It's probably going to be me, but it could be you two.
We'll see how it pans out.
Yeah, because all of your games were just so high scoring. And all my games are like down to the wire each time. It was like, if I make one mistake, I lose. And you're just like, I just dropped everything and I burned everything alive, and then I just charged them all, and they're all dead.
Somehow I won.
Yeah, they just all weren't there anymore. I just controlled the objectives.
You know what? You do have to learn to roll really fast with 20d6 6 times.
Yeah. Well, you make it all up in your first round, right?
Yeah, just guessing.
All right, ready, go. All right, I'm done.
Exactly. What?
Trust me, I need this time to roll all my flamer.
I'm reserving this time from round 1.
Plan on going to any other GTs or with this list, or is there any other GTs we're even thinking about going before LVO? Or
I want to say maybe, but we're about to be fostering kids, so a lot of shit's up in the air.
Yeah. Are you going to go to LVO if it all works out, or is that just immediate no already?
No, I have a ticket.
Okay. Are you going to bring this list?
Probably.
Yeah. I think I would try to bring your list too, just because it's easier.
Yeah.
I feel like there's less moving parts that you can mess up, so it's just a safer bet. But I also don't have the ability to paint 60 more acolytes between now and then.
Well, that's a bitch.
Yeah. So I have almost all of them. I'd probably need to buy like 4 boxes maybe. Probably just need 20 more. I just don't have time to paint that much, especially to like the standard my other ones are already painted at.
Well, if you had never built any hybrid metamorphs, you'd have enough.
Oh, I did, and I ripped all of their arms off, and they're all normal acolytes now. But you do know the moment the new codex comes out, the hybrid metamorphs are going to be like amazing. You're going to be like, well, ripping the arms off to go back.
I didn't rip my arms off. They're still hybrid metamorphs.
Just no one knows the difference.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
I have rock cutters, but because my hybrid metamorphs never see a light of day, I like to use the big claw boys as rock cutters because it looks cooler.
Yeah. I remember when claws were amazing.
Oh my God. Don't even get me started. Strength 6, just kill you.
Yeah. That was so good. But all right. Do you have anything else to talk about or anything else to pitch? Or
I already semi-plugged the March Clutch event. I probably should know when Dallas Open GT is, but I forgot. So Dallas Open GT, just for all those listening, if anybody asks, I plugged it really hard.
But that won't be until next LVOC or ITC season.
Yeah.
So if there's no more COVID by then. So, but hopefully we'll meet at LVO and then we can try our lists out again and see who's the better one there. I mean, you have to catch up or something in the points because, I'm ahead of you pretty high.
Oh, no. Fake. It's like the Drew Carey show. Points don't matter.
It does for bragging rights.
True. I'm just going to go stock up on RTTs.
That's what I did.
I know you did, you cheater.
I need to win. I need to go win one more to get my loss out of the gutter because it's giving me like 80 points. I need to get to 150. God. It's the only thing holding me back.
I'm going to go farm scrubs.
Yeah, we both know there are no scrubs in either of our metas. I mean, there are, but there's also all like the top. I think they looked it up. We have 3 of the top 7 best Harley Quinn players in my.
Real annoying.
Yeah, so I have to play the 3 best ones. I have to play Colin, who's number 3 in the ITC. So
I did win an RTT with my list.
Yeah, because that was when you called me and we were both driving home from our RTTs that we didn't know the other one was attending. And you won, and I only lost by 4 points because my army wasn't fully painted during it.
You know what only losing by 4 points is?
Oh, I do. I just don't want you to say it. Yeah. I was so mad. I was like, are you kidding? I lost because my 2 trucks weren't fully painted yet because my 3D printer broke and I couldn't print the parts for them.
And they look good.
Yeah, thank you. Even though I didn't get a lot of points for it apparently, but so hopefully I'll be able to hit 1 or 2 more RTTs before Vegas if it does even happen at this point, just to get that loss out of there and hopefully get 1 more RTT win.
Get her done.
Pretty much all I got going on. So you got nothing else, huh?
Nope, I got nothing.
All right. Well, anyone else that's listening, if you have any more questions or you want to know more about our tactics or anything specific, just leave a comment and we will see you next time.
Later, guys.
Bye.